Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are, whenever you're watching this. This is Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be all about my custom eyeshadow palette that I built in September, show you all the looks I did, and then we're going to select one for October. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Today's video is going to be all about my custom singles palette that I built myself last month, show you some looks I did and all the swatches and how the color story came together and my experience using it first. And then we're gonna go down to the floor and I'm gonna show you what I will be selecting for the month of October. So if that's something that you're interested in, then definitely stay tuned. In case you're new here, hi, my name is Maaike. I live in the Netherlands. I like to come in here and chat about eyeshadow palettes, essence and Catrice reviews, and getting the use out of my makeup. And because I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, I deem myself a snow angel. So if you would like to join the Snow Angel Club, then definitely click subscribe down below. So yes, my custom eyeshadow palette for the month of September, or at least I built it in September and I use it a couple of times in that time period. Now I was trying out quite a lot of eyeshadow, so I only built myself a little 6-pan. And so far, I only did a 9-pan once, and I really enjoy doing these very curated 6-pan color stories. That's really where I feel I've had the most success if I build myself a 6-pan color story. So this one was right up my street. And I thought it was very funny because when I put this together, I kind of knew I wanted to do something cocky green. And then as I was selecting the shades on the floor, like very often when I select these color stories, I kind of just look at the palettes in front of me and put the color story together. So I never really have a plan before going into the video. Like you see it happening on screen with me. And a lot of people were leaving comments saying, I don't feel that's very fall. It's more of a November palette. And I was like, but November is fall. I don't know about you. I know that online creators start making fall content already as like early September. But officially fall doesn't start until the end of September and it continues until right before Christmas. So for me, October, November, and part of December are very much fall. And I feel this is very much a fall color story. In fact, I mentioned it in a video then, I have a really gigantic tree right outside my window as I'm filming this. And exactly these shades I can see in this tree right in front of me right now. So it's not like leaves that have already turned color, but this is to me very much reminiscent of leaves that are about to change color. So you know when the vibrancy of the green in the tree starts to, well, it doesn't evaporate, but that starts to change and it starts to get this more goldeny undertone, but not quite yet. That's sort of what this, so for me, this was like, you know, post-summer going into fall. We're getting the grunge, but there's still some vibrancy around. And that's sort of what I was going with this color story. It is definitely a deep color story, but I like darker shades as long as they are not like super black. I do really enjoy some darker shades. And I ended up doing 3 different looks with these as well, so I'll be showing you those as well. But let me first talk about each shade individually and then talk about the looks I created and how I put them together. So the first shade that's in here is a square one from Clionadh, and I need to check because I'm not entirely sure. Yes, I'm right, but that shade is called Bloodline, and Bloodline is one of their stained glass multichromes. I'm not sure what finish it is. I'm gonna have to look it up. But Bloodline was one that I was like, yeah, I do want that. I'm not sure if you can see it in the close-up at all. Maybe if I like use a mirror, you might be able to see the flip in the pan already. But I hope it shows up when I swatch it. This is like a rusty burgundy kind of shade, but it flips green and blue. So, and a little bit of gold in there as well. And it's actually what I've got on my eyes today, in case you were wondering. And then next to that is Sydney Grace's Scarab, which is a like blue-brown sort of burgundy duochrome. It's a really cool shade. It's really dark and intense. And I believe this shade is also in the Tiny Marvels palette that they did in collaboration with Mel Thompson. In that palette, I believe it's called Scarab, if I'm not mistaken. And I just thought like this also has that blue, and I thought that these 2 shades together could make for a really nice grungy thing. This is a little bit more vibrant. This is really nice, deep, dark, and saturated, and that's what I was going for here. Then next to that is Sydney Grace's, was it Rainforest or Siren Call? I never know. it was Rainforest. So this round pen right here is Rainforest from Sydney Grace. It's a really great grayish toned, cool toned green. And it's really, really dark and intense. I use this as a liner, for instance. It can be very nicely used to deepen things up, and I felt that this shade is what made the grunge complete. So I'll talk to you in a minute how I use it in the most grungy look I did with the palette. Then we're gonna go one step down, and this is the shade from ColourPop. This is called Team Captain. So Team Captain was the khaki that kicked off the entire color story for me. I knew I wanted a khaki shade, and as I was going through my palettes, this was the thing in my singles collection that mostly resembled a khaki green. I think I used it in every single look I did with this palette. And this is a really, really good like crease shade. You can pop it all over the lid. You can use it to blend the Rainforest shade out. I mean, this was a really versatile shade to have in here. And then next to that, we have Juvia's Places Egypt. This is a repressed shadow from the Nubian 2. When I built the palette, I didn't know that because I had to go back to some of my older videos to see what this even was, because there's like, I didn't put a sticker on the back to remember what it is. I was like, oh yeah, it's a repressed Juvia's Place eyeshadow. So this is that really nice dark saturated olivey green shade from the Nubian 2. That was the only shade in that palette that really intrigued me. So rather than keeping the entire palette, I just kept the one shade, and that was a nice one. It's a standard green. I don't think it's super duper special from that perspective in this palette either, but it was nice to have a darker green shimmer because it means you can do an all green look if you'd want, very, very easily indeed. And then the last shade in the palette is Commissioner by Sydney Grace, and this in the pen, I feel it looks quite golden toned. It's like an olivey green, but on my eyes, when I applied it, I felt it look a lot more green. So the Commissioner shade was very different once it was on my eyes. It looks like a very warm toned green, but I felt it went really nicely with some of these cooler greens indeed, because on my skin tone, it just pulled a lot more green, and that's exactly what I was hoping for. It's a shade I had never put on my face yet, so I didn't know what it was gonna do. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing this sort of like, you know, playing with singles project, because I just want to get more use out of my singles, and I've come into quite a few singles over the years, but I haven't necessarily put them all to the test in an eye look. I've swatched them, but I haven't really seen how they perform with a brush, and then a shade like this just shows you that until you use a brush, and what brushes you use, as we will discuss in a minute for one of the looks I did, that it makes such a huge difference how eyeshadows perform, and that just going off what something looks like in a pen or in a finger swatch, it's just never gonna give you the entire story. So yeah, those are the 6 shades that are in here. Let me now talk to you about the 3 looks that I did with the palette. So the first look I created was an all green look. So I first went with these 4 shades. The shade I put in the crease is Team Captain from ColourPop, and then I popped Commissioner all over the lid, and I popped a little bit of Egypt on the lower lash line, and then I used Rainforest as a bit of liner. So this was a full green look, and I do think I used Bloodline just to accent the inner corner and have something different there, because there were a lot of dark shades here. So very often I did use Bloodline in every single look just for the inner corner, but I also wanted to make sure it had its own moment to shine, as you will see in a minute. But yeah, just a full-on green look, which I think is a very safe option that this palette had to offer. It was just, you know, nothing too out there. It was nice and dark and grungy for fall, but it was still green, and it wasn't too dark and sultry. It was a great wearable everyday look, but it was green rather than browns, because I think that, especially these 3, like if you ignore this part of the palette, isn't that just like a great like everyday but green eyeshadow palette? I thought it worked like that, and then using just this as liner makes it not that dark and smoky. But I also wanted to make sure we did something dark and smoky. So if I put these back together, the second look I did was using these 4 shades. So what I ended up doing for the second look, I knew I wanted to make sure that I did a look where I put that red chameleon shade from Sydney Grace front and center. So I started the look off with a little bit of Team Captain again in the crease, but just to give myself a base shade to work off with, because I ended up putting Rainforest into the outer V and smoking it out so that I really had a nice smoky base for these shades to play off with. So then I ended up using Team Captain as a bit of a blend shade there as well. And then I just popped this on the lower lash line and all over the lid because I was like, I want the grunge. And then I used Bloodline again in the inner corner, but I did pull it out towards the top like I have been doing quite a lot lately. So I have this perfect brush that really sort of fits into this hollow right here. And then I like connecting my inner corner to my crease shade up here. So I like bringing the inner corner up all the way to the brow bone. And that's the look that you're seeing in the second look. And the third look, I knew I wanted to do something that put Bloodline more to like front and center. And I sort of took inspiration here from how Hannah Louise Poston sometimes likes doing her makeup. And this is also the look that I'm wearing on my eyes today. This is 2 shadows. Well, technically it's 3. I used 3 of the shades, but one of them you can't even see I used. The main look is Team Captain and Bloodline. And rather than putting Team Captain in the crease at the start of the look, I took my MAC 217 and I just used a little bit and like tapped it all over the lid and blended it up where it just like meets the crease, just to lay a base shade down to give the multichrome something to play off on. And then I just used the multichrome all around it. I did pop a little bit of Egypt on this outer edge of my lower lash line just to add a little bit more something extra there. I always like if that bit of my lower lash line is just a little bit darker, and I like when the base layer there has a bit of shimmer. And the only thing I've kept matte is this outer edge. So what I did with Team Captain is that I did pull it out a little further and I sort of buffed it around my outer corner there. But that's the only thing I've kept matte pretty much, because I used a fluffy blending brush with a little bit of Bloodline to drag it all the way up towards the top of the crease. I used a more flat, like paddle brush to tap it all over the lid. And then I used my pencil inner corner brush from Sigma. I don't know what the number is called anymore. Just applied as an inner corner highlight, which I then dragged all the way in. And I used the brushes that I always use on my lower lash line to complete it all the way towards that outer edge. And then I also did the dragged out inner corner thing and really use that hollow that I have here because I have quite deep set eyes, and follow that line with a little bit of Bloodline as well. So yeah, essentially the look I'm wearing today is just this as a base layer and then this buffed all over it with like using different brushes and techniques to make it look different. And I think that that's how you really get the most out of a multichrome. I have mentioned in the past how I feel multichromes aren't always like the bee's knees of all things makeup, even though everybody now seems to demand multichromes left, right, and center. But to me, this is the best way to show off a multichrome, is to lay down some sort of base, or maybe not even, like if they're dark enough, then you can just use the multichrome by itself and just buff it out, and then you're going to get the full kaleidoscope of the multichrome from your inner corner to your outer corner. And I feel that because it's got the green underneath, it pulls more green all over the lid, but then you get that like orangey gold, more so where it just touches my bare skin. So I feel that this is the way to get the most out of a multichrome, and that's something I wanted to showcase with this palette as well. So that's all the shades that I was using this month. I hope you got some inspiration out of these looks and how I put the color story together. A lot of you were leaving comments because I wore a couple of these looks in some of the videos that I filmed already, and some of you were saying that you really enjoyed the makeup that I was wearing. So that made me very proud because it's a color story I made myself, and I'm trying, like I'm really sort of really in this like mode of like trying out different techniques and see what works. I don't know why. Maybe it took me, like I bought some new brushes over the summertime. I bought Refer brushes, I think already in April. And then I got some Spectrum brushes as well. And these new brush shapes have really sort of, and to really put those to the test and get the most use out of them, I have found I can do more with my makeup. So I've been really excited about doing eyeshadow at the moment, and this just goes to show that you need very few shades to do really interesting looks, because this looks like you've done a lot and really you haven't. So let me go down to the floor and show you what I will be selecting for October. But I already knew when I built this palette that I knew exactly what I wanted to do for this month. So I'm kind of cheating because I'm pulling in a palette. Let me show you what I have in store for you. Okay, so this is the thing that I was using. And I already knew right from the bat that this month, for October, I wanted to rope in my subculture for mattes, because this is a very matte heavy palette. But I've mentioned several times how I feel that this palette, because it doesn't have so many shimmers, we only get 3, that it's actually really good in a fall time with multichromes. So I've brought out my multichrome palette as well to see if I can pick like maybe 6 different multichromes to put into this palette to make sure that I have some other things to play with. So that's what I want to play with for October. So the subculture, and then 6 multichromes to have a bit of fun with. Now I do realize that I forgot to bring up my other palettes to put these back in, so I can do that part, but I think I want to go with some of these jeweled multichromes from Clionadh. This one especially, Forge, and I know I have one called Gargoyle in here, which I think is the one at the bottom. So those 2 I want to select for sure, and then a couple of these Divina ones, but I'm not sure yet which ones. So let me take these things out first and give it a clean, because this palette is getting a little grubby, and then we can start pulling things from this. Okay, so I was able to fit more in here than I actually thought. I did give it a bit of a rejig because I thought the color story looked better this way. So it's all multichromes. We've got 3 from Divina, 4 from Clionadh. I've got 3 jeweled multichromes in here because I feel that goes best with the subculture. Let me clear the decks so that I can explain my vision to you. I will be showing you swatches and looks with this when I do it next time. So the jewel, this is a grungy jewel toned color story, right? So you have those teals and the plum and this burgundy, and then you have these like mustardy yellow, orangey browns, and then you get some warmer browns, something cooler. This is a little bit more like a cool tone green, like an army green. So I wanted to make sure that like this part of the palette I'm probably going to ignore, and also that shimmer, but those mattes, like the darker things, is what I want to rope in with these. So the 3 Divina shades that I've got in here are Asteria, Thalassic, and Messier, and these like all have that sort of like undertone that will go really well with these shades, I feel. And then for Clionadh, I went with the jewel multichromes because I know for a fact from what I have already tried that these shades go really well with the jewel multichromes from Clionadh. So this is Forge, Smolder, Abrasion, and Gargoyle. So these are 3 are jewel multichromes, and this I believe is a glitter multichrome. And I haven't used that one yet, but it's a little bit similar to Bloodline, but I think it's a little bit more purple. So I'm hoping it goes really well with these like plummy burgundy shades it has. And then Forge is like green, red, gold. Smolder is another like warm toned one, but I haven't used it yet since I got it. Same thing for Gargoyle. This is one of those blue, green, gold flipping ones. And these I remember putting Thalassic with this palette in, and these Divina ones aren't too intense. So I know that these Clionadh ones can be really strong. So I'm very curious to see how it's going to go. And these seem to have a little bit more texture to them. So this Clionadh shade and then these two from Divina seem to have a little bit more of a sparkle to them. So that's something I want to experiment with to see how it goes with these shades. So is it cheating if I rope in a palette? But I think this way I can get some more use out of my subculture and my singles in one go. So let me know how you feel. And then this is what I'm going to be playing around with for the next couple of weeks. I'm excited. So that's it. That's what I have selected to play again with some singles for the month of October. I hope you're excited to see the picks this month. And if you have any suggestions for color stories or anything like that, then definitely let me know in a comment down below. I have some ideas already for November, but I'm not entirely sure just yet because I don't want it to be too similar to things that I have got going on in my palette selection then. And this is definitely going to be like different from what I've got going on in palettes that I will be trying out or going back to for the month of October. So thank you so very much for joining me today. Thumbs up the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more about me. I make several videos a week. So if you'd like to stay tuned and watch more of my videos, then I would love for you to subscribe. For now, I hope you have a great day. Take care. And then I hope to see you in my next video. Bye-bye.